this topic and idea kept coming into my heart and my mind. And I'll be honest with all of you. When you start talking about the Creator, Almighty God, it's a humbling thing. Because you have to hit the point where you realize, I'm really not going to be able to explain everything so perfectly about who God is, because God is all-powerful. He's all-knowing. He's eternal. I'm finite. He's infinite, right? So, but at the same time, that's encouraging. Because why would I worship a God who I could fully understand and tell you every single thing about, and he wouldn't be God to me? There's a sense of mystery that I think draws us closer to who God is, when we can't fully maybe explain every single thing. But nevertheless, it does not negate the presence of God and the reality of that. So that's what I'm excited to talk with you about. See, throughout humanity, we have always been challenged. We've always been, from the beginning of time, at this question of, and looking for, and a searching, and a journey. What do we worship? What do we serve? So I'm going to turn to Romans 1, chapter 1, verse 20. So if you have your Bible, your smartphone, your dumb phone, whatever it is. That was so mean. Listen, you guys remember the old Nokias with the game Snake on it? Yeah, that phone was very smart. Snake was the most amazing, genius game ever. Not Snake 2 and on the newer Nokia. I'm talking old school, little blocks moving around, collecting other blocks, enlarging your snake. Yes, awesome. All right, so nothing against those phones. Now we just buy them to play the game on it, but who cares? All right, Romans chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 20 through 25. This is Paul. He's writing to the church of Rome. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of God, the immortal God, for images made to look like a mortal human being, and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Like I said, humanity has always strived to worship or serve something. Paul's writing to Rome because he's seeing this take place in the Roman Empire and in the church, specifically there, that's beginning to grow in Rome. Listen, I think of stories where things that I like to create and liked to create when I was a child. Was anyone someone who liked to build things? Lincoln Logs? Anyone? Yes. Wow, even an applause for Lincoln Logs. Amazing. What was that other one for like the more intelligent kids? The Connects? Yeah, that was you. That was not me. I was like, give me blocks in little two directions. Legos, yes, Legos as well. I wasn't patient enough for that either. I was special. So things you like to build. Okay, I like to build traps, and I did as a child. And my father shared a story a couple Sundays ago about how he built a trap as a child. And I remember when I was little, and he was telling this story at the dinner table, it gave me a great idea. I want to be like Dad, man. I want to build a trap too. I think I was around 10 years old. And this trap was this, okay? You basically dug a hole about 2 feet, and you put at the bottom of it water balloons. Water balloons, yes. Ones that break easily. Not an actual, like, balloon that gets filled with helium that you fill with water, because if you've ever tried that before, they don't break. And when you throw them at someone, it's like, poof, it's still there. Boom, boom. I remember we did that once, and it's like, man, this isn't working how we thought it would, and this poor person is getting beat down for their birthday. So put water balloons down there, and then you cover it with some dirt, and then you cover it with some leaves and some grass, and then more dirt and leaves and grass, okay, and then it piles all the way up there. So the thinking behind it is when someone steps, they go all the way down, it punctures the water balloon, it explodes, creates mud, and a suction, and so you're stuck like this high up to your knee, okay? So this is the story he shared, and as a child, I'm like, well, I can do this too. I can do this too. So I go in the backyard right off of our porch, and I build this trap, thinking like, well, if someone ever tried to come in to our home through the porch, they'll step in this little 1-foot radius compared to everything else around it. Now, if I was to build that, I would do like a moat, you know what I'm saying? All the way around the house with a drawbridge, but we can't afford a drawbridge yet. So I build this thing. A week goes by and nothing happens. I'm furious. I'm waiting for it. So finally, I'm like, I created this and nothing's happening. So one day, while I'm off to school, I'm like, I am the only one then who can do this. So I just walked off the porch and with my uniform on, getting ready to school, stepped into it to see if it worked. And sure enough, it did. Suctioned all the way up to the top, mud all over my Land's End khaki pants for uniform. And there it was. So my creation, I myself destroyed, but everyone knows that's okay. When you're the creator, you can do whatever you want with your creation, right? So that was something I like to create. Also other traps as well. I remember I made spider webs with like kite string, you know, where you're supposed to fly a kite with. I'm like, well, look at all that string. We can make a spider web, a giant one. And in the woods. And I remember a friend of mine, Bradley Bichelle, he'll be here in a couple of weeks, him and his wife will be leading us in worship. At night, he was taking out the garbage, and they were our neighbors, and he totally got caught in it, and it was awesome. I just remember hearing like, you know, I'm like, I got someone. It was a trap only at night that you would see, but still you could kind of see it. So I'm like, Bradley, what were you thinking? So creating things, we love that. But, even more specifically, we as human beings look for something to worship and to serve, even beyond ourselves. So, as we dialogue with that, that's where we see something begin to be birthed. Religion. I'm going to give you the definition of religion. A form of beliefs and a system in which humanity worships a superhuman controlling power or deity. Superhuman. Who's the first person you think of when you hear that word? Clark Kent, thank you. Superman, that's right. June 12th, baby. So is it June 12th or is it technically June 11th for those of you who are like, we're going at the midnight showing? No? Okay. So a form of beliefs and a system in which humanity worships a superhuman controlling power or deity. See, for thousands of years, people have searched for the meaning of truth, to find their own nature, the meaning of the universe and what's around us. And in that search, humanity has created something, religion, because we see powers and things that are beyond our own control and our own strength. And we see those things, and we desire to worship them and serve them. And we're going to go further even to talk about how that's not just literally religions like we think of, it's also philosophies. But just to kind of peer back on history, because I love history, I think it's something so great that we need to understand more in order to understand where we're at. So we're going to look back and look at a few early religions, and even seeing how far back they've gone. Ancient Egypt, right? Familiar with ancient Egypt? Anyone? Anyone ever been to Egypt before? No one. One person. Awesome. Yeah, it was actually a phone, not a person who whistled to say, look at me. But that was perfect timing. Now we're all going to start doing it, and then we're going to do the sign for the movies. Movies are on my mind right now. Let's just go to the theater right now. No, okay. So ancient Egypt, all the way back to 3100 BCE. That's how far back it goes. All right? That's how far back it goes that we see these ancient religions. Specifically, when we look at Egypt, though, we see they worshipped nature, animals, right? Even humanity itself. Nature, the sun. The sun was very, very important to the ancient Egyptians. Along with also animals, we see cats. We see the Sphinx with the head of Pharaoh, the body of a lion, birds. So you see how they really were focusing on something, right? They were focusing on the creation because there was something beyond that they couldn't explain, so they began to worship the creation. Even humanity, Pharaoh himself was considered God incarnate, a deity. We see that in ancient Egypt. Zoroastrianism. Try saying that word together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Zoro. Very good. I stayed silent to see, and you get awesome. I was hitting it, like if you go to dictionary.com or whatever, you can hit to hear how it's supposed to be said. And I kept hitting it to get that in my head. Because that's when you look at it, you're like, what? And then the little thing's like, Zoroastrianism, right? Zoroastrianism. Got a weirdo in there repeating this. Someone walked in, what are you doing, man? As old as 1200 BCE, that goes all the way back. They worshiped nature, and deity, and what they thought was God, and looking at nature and how these things work. Then we go into Greek religion, right? As old as 900 to 800 BCE. You guys are familiar with that? A Greek god, first one that pops in your mind, yell it out. Hercules, technically kind of a demigod, right? So we look there and we see Greek mythology, something we're familiar with. The 12 Olympian gods, right? And actually, when we look at them, we see that they're very much associated with the attributes of humanity or nature itself. You said Zeus out there, right? Thunder and lightning, defender of humanity. They came up from these things, seeing nature, seeing the power of creation. They began to worship creation there. They saw the power of the sea and the water. Poseidon comes forth. That's the god of water. Then we also go further, right? And we see wisdom, that man can have wisdom. They put a goddess there, Athena, and the sun, and music, Apollo, the god Apollo. And this is something very common, perhaps probably what we're most familiar with when we think about ancient gods. Mythology, it's Greek mythology. And that's 900 to 800 BCE. And then the Roman religion comes in and kind of adopts the Greek mythological gods, and they give their own names to it. And that's around 27 BCE. And we can go on and on and on and on, talking about all these religions, all these schools of thought, Norse religion, Celtic religion, all these things that have beliefs and systems, but based upon what we see in nature, worshiping idols, worshiping creation itself. But even nowadays, we have that as well. This is not just something ancient that we look at. No, even nowadays we have that. Astrology and horoscopes, right? That's looking at the stars, trying to predict our future, our life, to tell us more about who we are, what we were meant to be, by staring at nature, at creation, and in one sense, really worshiping it. Also, philosophies and schools of thought. Perhaps now more than ever, that's something that we do worship. You know what that makes me think of as we go further, what we read in Romans 1. And I'm going to take us back to that scripture because it talks about a self-made God. So let's go to Romans 1, verse 22 and 23. It says, although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles. Idolatry. We hear about it all the time. And we think probably, when you hear that word, you probably think of some sort of large idol that you saw in your humanities class, large book that you never looked through, the class that you all slept through, right? I remember I had friends who, we were in the back row. I liked humanities. Anyone else? Humanities? Yes. 4 people. We were in the back, and I remember my buddy, man, they would always fall asleep in this class. Like, not even the first minute the professor opens up his mouth, like, they're all in the back. One time he went under the desk because it was a wall, the way the chairs were, it was walled there, and he just put a little pillow and slept there the whole class. Just like so cozy. I'm like, dude, we're about to take notes. He's like, shh, shh, it's my roommate. But then another buddy of mine, he fell asleep, sitting in his chair, backwards like this, right? Mouth open. And so that day was a very boring lecture. And so we decided, let's crumple up little pieces of paper and keep putting them in his mouth until he realizes, as he's trying to breathe, he's breathing through hundreds of little pieces of paper. So we're working very diligently at this the whole time, putting it in his mouth. And he's just totally like, and he always had a stuffy nose, so it's heavy breathing out of the mouth. So finally, we put in just a ton, and all of a sudden, like, we're like, he's not waking up. This is no fun. We have to speed up the process. So we, like, hit the table or something, kind of wake him. He gets up. He's like, he starts spitting all of them out, and we're like, oh. Just, in school and classes, when you're not supposed to find something funny, it's all the more even funnier, and you're like, I got the giggles. I can't stop laughing. So that's what took place there, and I don't even think the humanities professor lifted up his head from the book he was lecturing from the whole time. So he didn't even realize it. It was a great class. So, yes, idolatry. You think of that picture, that idol. A physical idol. Oh, Baal, or we think of ancient Egypt. We think of these things and these large idols. And we kind of laugh at it like, funny people. And even nowadays, if you've done any traveling outside of, this country here in America and even beyond Western Europe and Eastern Europe, if you've gone into Africa and parts of Asia and India and South and Central America, you actually will see that people still do nowadays worship idols. Yeah, they worship idols. Animists, people there in Africa. Remember in Tanzania when we went there, before you walked into their hut, yep, right there was a little thing that was built, like a little mini hut. Little figures inside there. We said, what is that? Well, they said, that's our God. It's where the spirits live. So people still do that. But we look at that and we kind of laugh. They have so much to learn. Idols. Come on. But you know what? We do the same thing. We do the exact same thing. We might not literally have a physical idol sitting there in our room, but we do the same thing with some movie stars. You're like, this is stupid. That's high school, man, where you had posters up. No. You frame your life after them. We take people and we heighten them. We push them up there. People who have power, maybe, and success. And in our lives, it's like we have that idol there. If I could just be like that. This is who I want to be like. That person. We might not say it out loud to ourselves in the mirror when we wake up. But you know what? We think it. We even create our life and the structure of our life to be built around it. Wealth, status, knowledge, intellect. Certain philosophies that we live by. This is my philosophy. They've become idols in our lives, but we're so quick to mock and to almost laugh and smile a little bit on that. Oh, those people who worship those actual wooden statues. But we ourselves have these things in our lives. So quick to point fingers, but we have them, idols in our lives. And then maybe perhaps the largest even nowadays that we experience, humanity itself becomes an idol. Romans 1:25, right? They exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Humanism. Maybe you're familiar with that term. I'm going to read you a quick definition. Lots of definitions today, right? Like humanities class, all right? Humanism, any movement or ideology that focuses on the worth of the human being. That's all. Really started to be built around the 18th and 19th century, during the time of the Enlightenment and free thinking, where humanism really started to become stronger. Basically, that idea of focusing on us, humanity, our abilities, our skills. And in the Enlightenment, there was so much invention that was taking place. Actually, you see that religion started getting kind of squeezed out of it. It's at that time that religion and science really begin to separate in those moments, when actually throughout history, religion and science have always been tightly knit together, except for the last 300 years. And these things start going, and then suddenly you have humanism. But there's two types: Christian humanism, secular humanism. Christian humanism. This emphasizes the fact that humans are created in God's image and as such are creatures of worth and value. But then there's secular humanism. Sees the worth of humans apart from any appeal to God. Humanist often suggests that the value is completely intrinsic to the individual. Man is the measure of all things. You know, we experience that now more than ever. Actually, it's praised. That's why we're going to jump at the end of Romans 1, right in verse 32. It says, although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, those who worship creation, humanity, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. And not just approve like that's okay, but in one sense, applaud. They applaud. But don't we do that now? So often, so quick, we want to worship even just humanity in and of itself, who we are, what we achieved, what we have done. God's not against success, but we're going at the root issue here. And we live in a society that kind of smirks and laughs, even if you say, I'm not going to make that decision until I really pray about it and seek what God might want me to do on it. They laugh. Oh, you can't make your own decisions up. Come on. You have a mind. You have skills. You have gifts. You have talents. But see, from the wrong perspective, when we're so focused on the creation and even ourselves, we get blurred and those things turn to pride. And we distort them. Because in actuality, God is the one who created us, right? So if anyone takes pride in his creation, it's the Creator. Like my trap. It was awesome. And I'm going to get all of you next Friday when you walk in the church. There's going to be pockets of traps. I'm going to laugh at you from the roof of the church. No, okay. So just this takes place, right? We get in that mindset and we're in a world that's so focused on self. But in Romans 1:32 at the end there, we see that Paul is saying these things are wicked and out of them come confusion and corruptness. And don't we see that in our world? People are so self-focused who worship self, worship humanity, those idols in our lives that we have. The creation, we praise it, we applaud it, but we're all dying on the inside and falling apart because that's not the answer. We weren't intended to just worship the creation. We were intended to worship the Creator. But you know what's cool about our Creator? He's approachable. He's approachable. I mean, we're finite. He's infinite. If you ever looked at pictures of space, right? There's one YouTube video, you type just telescope pictures of space and choir song. Yes, I know. Remember that. YouTube, you just think of something funny, you're like, I wonder if they have a video on that. People falling down the stairs doing ninja rolls. It's like a random thing, and sure enough, yes. So you do that, and you can see all these amazing pictures of space, and then like a glorious choir in the background. And I remember we were watching once, and it was like me and two of my friends, and all of a sudden, we were talking and laughing, and then 4 minutes in the video, we're all silent like this. Oh. Because you just see, we're following, the pictures as they're flowing. Wow, it's a galaxy, whoa. But if you look at these things, you see just the eternal glory of God. They say the universe is constantly expanding, constantly creation is taking place by the hands, by the breath of our God and our Creator. But He's approachable. See, in theology, we talk about two types of revelation. We talk about general revelation and specific revelation. I'm going to tell you what general means. God revealed through nature and His creation. Paul talks about it there in Romans 1. When we look at nature, when we see the sun, when we see the seasons, when we see the mountains and the water and the glory, when we see each other, we can't help but at that point say there must be something more. We can't help but at that point say, wow, we see kind of the imprint of God there. But it doesn't just stop there. See, that's the beautiful picture about Christianity. Our God, it doesn't just stop there at nature and what we see and what we perceive of the powers greater than ourselves. There comes a special revelation. Jesus Christ. God comes to us. He comes to us. The Creator of all becomes fully man and God, and He comes to you and to me. And He creates a bridge that allows us, the fallen creation that we were, to now grab hold and take hold of the Creator's hand in our relationship with Him. He's not just distant and unapproachable, just some being far off. Like the word transcendent, that means he's far off. He doesn't really and can't really relate to us and connect with us. He's not just the creator where he created everything and said, see ya, and left a little bit, like deism talks about. Some of your friends might say, I'm a deist. Some of you here might say, yeah, I'm not with this whole thing yet about Jesus and Christ, and I'm kind of laying there, agnostic and deist. Literally that idea that God created in deism, and then he left. He's disconnected. That's not the God we serve. We serve a God of love, and this is what that means. He's immanent. He's with us. He's with us. He came down to be with us, and yet he still remains with us through all that we walk through. Hard times, difficult times, fun times. He's there in the midst of us. There's someone special who I want to share about, and I'm going to invite the band to come up here now at this time. Anyone familiar with a man by the name of Blaise Pascal? Right? You're like, You know the game roulette in the casinos? Don't say yes to that. No, I'm kidding. You know what I'm talking about? They drop the ball. It goes around. Okay, he created that. And it's kind of sad that he's only known for inventing that. But the truth of the matter is that man was a brilliant mathematician and scientist. But beyond that, a philosopher and a theologian. Yes. Such an exciting humanities class today, right? So Blaise Pascal, this man, he was a thinker, theologian, and philosopher, but there's something very interesting that happens to him in his life at one point. He's actually at a hotel, just spending the night. Normal night in the hotel, he's traveling. Most likely he was probably just doing lectures at different universities. And he says he had an experience with God where God was like a fire that enraptured him like never before. And he says something that's when I heard this story, it caught my heart, it caught my mind with this statement that he says. He takes it and he actually sews it into a patch that he then puts into his jacket that he would wear when he would do lectures. And this is what it said. It said, I no longer serve the God of the philosophers and scholars, but the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this is what he was saying in that moment. Because he experienced God. He said, I no longer serve the God of the philosophers and scholars who tell us that God was just simply transcendent and distant. That they would talk about God, and I'm not attacking philosophy and thinking, but at this time, this is what he's talking about. They talk about God so distant from us. But in that moment, he says, in that room, when I cried out to God, I felt him. I felt his presence. In the midst of my pain, I felt his presence there. And that's why he says, I serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because when we look in the Old Testament, we see a God who is with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He speaks to them. He makes them promises and builds covenants with them. He's involved in their life in that place, in that time. And that's why Blaise Pascal says, no, I don't serve the God of the philosophers and scholars. I serve a God who is with me, whose presence is with me. See, guys, here's the thing. When you choose to worship something that is limitless, someone who is eternal, God, our Creator, when you step beyond the creation and you worship him, your growth is limitless. Because it's being pulled from a source that has no end. That's what we were intended to do. That's what we were intended to be. And here's the deal. I want to end it with this. Know that you are special. In no way am I attacking humanity or the creation that we're able to do through art and structure and cities that are built and inventions that are made and who we are as people. But we're looking at it so often from the wrong perspective, and that's why we get such a shallowness to our life. Because that depth in the area we're digging from is us, humanity, and in that there's an end, there's a limit. We fail, we mess up. But when we dig from the well of God, our almighty creator, there is no end. That's where we find depth. See, when I think of an artist painting a picture, He's the only one who truly appreciates every stroke of that brush in that painting. He's the only one. He knows every color he used, how difficult that one part was. When we stare at it, we say, what a beautiful picture. Maybe even some of you say, well, I really study art and I look at it and all that stuff. That's great. But the only person who cherishes every single stroke of his painting is the artist himself. That's our Creator, how much he loves us, his creation. Yeah, every bit, every gross part of us, where we've messed up, where we failed. He loves us. He cherishes us. See, when you begin to worship the Creator and see life and creation through the eyes of Christ, you begin to actually really experience and appreciate who you were meant to be, who you were called to be. You learn to love deeper. You learn to love more in the way He intended it. So let's all stand up together at this time. And just realize when we worship and when we serve the Creator, we begin to see the imprint of His love that was built into our life when He formed us, when He made us, when He thought of us. So that's my challenge now, even in this time of response during worship. Man, we do mess up, but He loves us. He cherishes you. He cherishes me. And let's just worship our God, because He is truly great. He is truly mighty.